Namaste. Krishna says in verse 10 of the fourth chapter, purified by ascetic wisdom, released from attachments, fear, and anger, and completely absorbed in me, many have attained oneness with me. I know that later Krishna says, out of thousands one seeks me, and out of many who seek me, one perhaps attains me. It seems almost depressing when you think how difficult it is. And yet the other side is, he says, many have attained me. And after all the billions of people living in this world, surely a few can get to that goal. I would say the main thing is to have faith that you can get there. You are a part of him. He owes it to you. Well, he doesn't owe it really because you've been wandering on your own for countless incarnations, but still you belong to him. And so you have a right to know him. And so he says, purified by ascetic wisdom. Asceticism means to give up things. And ascetic wisdom is the understanding that when you have given up this thing, you're not depriving yourself. Actually, you're finding the goal of all living. The less you want, the more you have. The more you want, the less you have. You don't have riches if you're looking for them. But if you don't want them, the ascetic nature is one that gives up, that says, I don't need these things. And some people go to extremes and live just on very little food, living out in the jungle, in a cave or whatever. But that wisdom that comes from understanding that you don't need anything, you are just complete in yourself. This is an affirmation that you should be making in your own life. Tell yourself that every night, I've suggested this again and again, every night before you go to sleep, sit in meditation. And when you've achieved a certain level of calmness in your meditation, mentally build a fire, a havan kund, and cast into that fire every seed of desire. Remember all the things that you wanted. No, I don't need that. All the things you are attached to. No, I don't need that. This is not I. With that ascetic wisdom, you gradually come to see, and it's a very natural thing that you become aware of your oneness with God, and many have attained God through that state. But I want to emphasize again that the ascetic side is not enough because it's dry. I remember this sadhu that I met. He was 132 years old, and he certainly had a certain amount of power to have lived so long. But he told me I should not enjoy anything. Well, my guru said, enjoy everything with the joy of God. I've had the good fortune to meet many great saints in this country. I remember meeting Devahara Baba. He was 144 years old when I saw him. And he gave prasad to people by throwing oranges and apples and bananas at the crowd. And the vigor with which he threw them was quite amazing. And he had black hair and a very strong body. There was Maharaji, who lived 180 years. There's Baba Gorokanath, who lived 300 years. Many saints have lived a long time. The yogis explain one reason for it is that when they are breathless, they're not using up those breaths. And you're allotted, so they say, a certain number of breaths in your lifetime. And when they're spent, then you die. I don't know if that's true, but at any rate, they do say that breathlessness is deathlessness. If you can live without the need to depend upon your body. There was a saint, Baba Haridas. He lived in the 1700s, and he was buried underground for 40 days, and he had his nose stopped up and everything, so he couldn't breathe, but he was underground anyway. And when they brought him up after 40 days, he was completely dead. And some French physicians examined him and said, yes, he's dead now. And then he just, with willpower, wakened himself up. So Baba Haridas had certain powers. One time a Christian missionary was in a boat with him, and Baba Haridas asked this Christian missionary, "What can your Jesus Christ do that I can't do?" Well, because they were in a boat, the missionary said, "Well, he could walk on water." And Haridas said, "Is that all?" And he got out of the boat and walked on the water, and the boat followed him wherever he walked. He certainly had miraculous powers. Certainly he had some definite and extraordinary attainment. But you know, an interesting thing was that the Maharaja of that era, of that particular country, said to some friends of his, "I know you all think very highly of this man, but I feel there's something wrong." And he could feel that there was still ego there. And one day this Baba Haridas ran away with a woman and lived with her for a while. And then he realized he'd made a mistake and came back to his disciples. And he said, "I'm sorry, and I've come back to you." But he found liberation in that life, so my guru said. I know a disciple of my guru asked the question, but isn't the punishment much greater when you fall from a high state? And my guru said, God is no tyrant. He doesn't judge the way we do. And when he sees that this person really didn't want anything, he didn't want that stale cheese, he wanted fresh and good cheese, he wanted God. And when he saw that, then it wasn't a question of forgiving him, he just took him back. But this Baba Haridas did have that ego, did fall, and you have to be afraid of that possibility, because there's always that danger. You have to watch yourself. You're not safe until the very end. When you've reached Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then you are free. But even if you have Savikalpa, you've seen your oneness with the universe. I know there's a well-known teacher in America who appears to me to have attained that state. But he doesn't know that that's not the final state. And he's come back to the ego, and he's a very fine man, but there's still ego there. When you've reached Nirvikalpa, then when you go into the infinite, there's no ego to come back to. And that is when you attain Jivan Mukta. You become a Jivan Mukta. I guess you have to say attain Jivan Mukti, I'm not sure. Anyway, the thing is that as you meditate more and more, this state does come to you. And it's not so difficult. I remember my guru said at the first meditation that I was at, he said, of the people here today, there will be a few siddhas and quite a few jivan muktas. That's quite a promise. A siddha is one who has attained moksha, and a jivan mukta is one who has attained freedom while living but still has past karmas to work on. And this is something that you can attain. You have to be very fervent, you have to be absolutely clear, but it will help you if in examining your life, and you should every evening practice introspection. Sanjaya is that quality of introspection that sees what you have done. Look over your life and weigh everything that you have done against that desire for bliss in your heart. Have you been rude to somebody? You don't have to think deeply. Just think, did it give me bliss? You know it didn't. It can't give you bliss. If you speak rudely, if you are unkind, if you're insulting, all of these things will take you down the spine and into suffering. So in your spiritual progress, always examine yourself all day long. Usually, as it says, my sons and the children of Pandava, what did they? Usually after a battle is when you start analyzing and seeing, what did I do wrong? Or did I do right? How did my soldiers on the other side fare in this battle? But you can do it even during the battle if you always keep your mind rigidly on dharma. I have made it a practice in my life to be rigidly dharmic, and I have found that I know that I was in the hospital with double pneumonia in Gurgaon at the Privat hospital. This was several years ago. I had double pneumonia and I was hardly conscious. And the doctor came into my room and he said, "Sir, can you help me?" Well, I mean, I was hardly conscious and he's asking me to help him. But anyway, I said, "Go ahead and tell me." And he said, "I have a son in Canada in college, and I believe in yoga, I believe in dharma, and I try my best, but how is it possible always to succeed and always be dharmic? It seems to the worldly ego that you can't always follow the rules. There have to be times when you slip a little bit in dharma, when you cut corners, and when success can't come to you unless you absolutely and firmly adhere to that path." But I said to him at that time, my answer to him was, "I have found that by being dharmic, I have always succeeded." Well, I'm afraid I was not an advertisement for success, lying there practically unconscious. But after that I decided that I would write a course on this. I thought that this would help Indians very much, because I know that Indians believe in dharma, but that same question that doctor asked me is one that many people ask. Yes, I want to be dharmic, but I've got to be practical. And I have shown in these lessons, which I wrote afterwards, it took me 1.5 years to write them, I have shown that if you are rigidly dharmic, everything will come to you in the end. It may not look like it. It may look as if you're bound for disaster. But I have really made it a practice, and I can say this with absolute conviction. It looked as if I was going to fail. One time we had a fire in our community. It destroyed 450 of our 900 acres. It destroyed 21 of our 22 homes. My home, fortunately, was apart from that, but many homes were burned down. And later it was discovered that the fire was caused by a county vehicle, a faulty spark arrestor. And all our neighbors sued the county and collected, and they were very excited for us because they said, "You can sue and you can get back all the money." We were the biggest losers in that fire. We had no insurance, we had no money, no savings, and I wrote to the supervisors of the county, and I said, "I know you're worried about what we will do because we're the big losers in this." And I said, I will not take out our bad luck on our neighbors. I will just, if we go bankrupt, then we go bankrupt. If we succeed, it'll be God's grace. But I would not sacrifice my dharma to cut the corners in order to succeed. I think most people don't understand that, and that's why I'm telling you it's so important. Yata dharmastata jaya. When you are dharmic, when you are rigidly dharmic, you will find that even if it looks like success is absolutely impossible, you will come through. And I just told myself, if I fail, then all right. But if God wants me to succeed, then it's His business to help me to succeed. And I know that even there were several people, the people who lost their homes, several people just lost hope in continuing to live there, and they left the community. And we gave them the money for their burned up houses before we used any money to reconstruct our own homes. Now this doesn't seem like common sense. Common sense will tell you to cut sharp corners. But I tell you from experience, I know what I'm talking about. If you remain steadfastly dharmic and give it all to God, He will protect you. As Krishna says, "O Arjuna, my devotee is never lost." I had built Ananda not for myself, not even for other people. I had built it for God. It was a place that I had constructed where people could seek God. And that was my principle. I have adhered to it, as I said, religiously. Well, you can understand these things by intuition, but you can't understand them reasonably. Reasonably, of course, I should have sued. Reasonably, of course, we should have had insurance. Of course, we couldn't afford it then, so maybe I'll cut that one out. But surely I should have sued. Surely I should have expected people to come in and help. Surely I should have sent out all sorts of appeals for money and so on. For some reason we didn't do even that. A little bit we did, but mostly when God came to me, and when God came to us and helped us, it all worked out. I remember I said at one time that I was in Hawaii when this fire happened. I was editing my book, The Path, and I came back and I talked to the community, and I said, now's the time we must make a strong affirmation. We must make it a point to try to earn at least $1 million a year. It seemed like a preposterous thing. In fact, one of my favorite ill-wishers and enemies, self-styled enemies, came to me one time and said to me, well, you said you wanted to earn $1 million. It didn't happen. Well, it did happen. We earned that money and we went on to thrive and we went on to build buildings and build temples and all, build Ananda. Actually, our development really began from that moment. And again I have seen that when I was faced with fierce opposition, this man was, he was really, I would have to say, an evil person, because he just thrived on seeing me fail. He wanted to fail, wanted me to fail. He never paid to be at Ananda. You have to pay, but I let him stay. And after 13 years, 12 years, somebody said to him that either you should start paying or leave Ananda. You're not doing your duty here. So he left. And then he came and talked against me and talked against me, us to other people. But he's become arthritic and it's hard for him to get around anywhere. He's become very cynical. And he actually had the temerity to say that if I would listen to him, I would amount to something. Well, that's his perception. He's just a blind man. But when you live for God, you will find He does take care of you. Joy to you.